You see, prayer is a channel that we use for connecting with God. Not a God up in the sky somewhere, but a God that's everywhere present. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, defines prayer in the Revealing Word as communion between God and man. I love that. Communion between God and man. So you can come to church every Sunday and listen to a speaker talk about God, but if you don't spend some time in prayer, you will not have a direct connection or communion with God. I believe we have great musicians here, don't we? Well, good morning. I'm hoping we have a little bit of fun this morning. But I have to start off with a confession. And my confession is that I really like television. I used to be ashamed to admit that I liked television because I think there's a stigma attached to it, especially among people in spirituality. You would hear people say like, well, I don't watch much television, or I don't even own a television set. Like somehow that made them more spiritual. Now, I haven't heard it as much here, but people on the West Coast used to say it all the time. So as a minister, I often had this kind of guilty conscience about watching television. But I want you to know that I don't perceive it as unspiritual at all. And so I wanted to take some time this morning to correlate television with prayer. Yes. You see, prayer is a channel that we use for connecting with God. Not a God up in the sky somewhere, but a God that's everywhere present. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, defines prayer in the Revealing Word as communion between God and man. I love that. Communion between God and man. So you can come to church every Sunday and listen to a speaker talk about God, but if you don't spend some time in prayer, you will not have a direct connection or communion with God. Now, I could sit and listen to somebody talk about television all day, but until I turned on the set, which is the receiver, I wouldn't really have any idea of what it was really about. All I would have was somebody else's idea about it. So prayer is turning on the reception and turning in to the frequency of God. You see, the interesting thing about television is it's being broadcast all the time, regardless of whether we turn on our set or not. It's not like the evening news or Star Trek or Saturday Night Live is sitting around waiting for Cindy to turn on her TV and then they go, okay, we can start broadcasting now. No, there's something being broadcast all the time. Now, I have to tell you, this analogy would not have worked 60 years ago when there was only 3 stations and they went off at night and came back on in the morning. I'm old enough to remember that. But today, we have not only cable TV, but streaming television. And it doesn't matter what time of the day or night, you turn on that set, there will be something somewhere being broadcast. And all we have to do is tune into the signal. And they don't care if your cable's turned on or your wires are hooked up. Doesn't matter. Something is still being broadcast all hours of the day. And even late at night, if you can't sleep, you can always find something to watch, even if it's just the shopping channel. When I was in ministerial school, there was many nights when I couldn't sleep and I would get up and turn on that shopping channel. And if you're not getting a good reception, you can always switch to another channel and maybe you'll get a better reception. So how many of you have tried to pray and found that you were getting static in your prayers? Yeah. People tell me they have trouble meditating sometimes. Meditating is a form of prayer. And some people try to meditate and all they get is static and noise. They can't quiet their mind. They can't still their body. They can't hear that voice of God. Well, that's the wonderful thing about television. If you don't like what's being broadcast, you can change the channel. And it's the same in life, and it's the same with prayer. If your thoughts aren't aligned, that are bringing you things in your life that you desire, you can change what's being received by changing the channel. So this morning what I'm talking about is streaming reception prayer. Some of you have only been praying on one channel. You have your little rabbit ears, and all you're getting are one or two channels. And maybe that channel's affirmations, maybe it's meditations, and if those work for you, great. Keep doing it. But you know, if the storms of life get a little rocky now and then, I'm here to tell you, there's always a channel that you can turn to. Sometimes it takes a little ingenuity and creativity to find it. We're so used to that one channel that we don't realize there are other channels out there. And we always have that option of changing the channel. So cable TV is wonderful. Today we have streaming TV, which feels totally unlimited. You can even get it on your phone. I watch my TV on my phone sometimes. And it's great because if there's some station that you don't like, I might like, and there's just so much variety. And it's the same with connecting with God. Now, of course, we know on the TV there's a lot of religious channels. I don't watch them as much anymore, but I used to watch Robert Schuller's Hour of Power. Anybody used to watch that? That used to be on all the time. And then in California, we actually had a Unity TV channel that was done by Phil and Dorothy Pearson out of the Unity Church in Sacramento, and it was called The Best Is Yet to Be. And I used to watch that one. But there are a lot of channels that connect you to the God of your choice. And many of you come here on Sunday morning to listen to this live channel, and many of you are watching on Facebook or YouTube right now, and that's the channel that you're watching. And for some of you, that's the only channel that you have. But I'm hoping to broaden that outlook this morning. And so we're going to take a look at some of the channels on TV. So I mentioned the shopping channel. The shopping channel is actually the channel many of us started out prayer with. You know? We'd kind of tune into the channel of life and look around and see what we wanted, and we'd put our order in. And that was the only time we prayed. Well, I don't visit the shopping channel of prayer very much anymore. Once in a while, maybe it comes in handy. But you know, life would be pretty boring if that was the only channel we had to pray. So luckily, we have a lot more options. We have educational channels. Channels for those people who need to learn and experience God through knowledge. The Hindus actually call this the path of Jnana Yoga, the path of knowledge. And did you know that you can make reading a book a way to connect with God? If you're reading the Bible, say, those things written in red that are what Jesus' words, or the Bhagavad Gita, with an open mind for inspiration, that can be a great way to connect with God. Or it could be some other spiritual book that talks about God, like A Course in Miracles, or there's many, many, many spiritual books that are in our bookstore. If you sit down to read it with the intention of connecting on a higher level with your Creator, you can experience prayer. Now, this is not to say that simply reading a book is always prayer. But if you read something with the intention of connecting with God, with that attitude of openness, then you can have an experience of prayer. It's happened to me a couple of times reading books where I actually had a mystical experience. I was reading a book called The Cloud of Unknowing, which is an ancient book. It was translated into English. It's a book on centering prayer. One time I was reading my minister, Carol Ruth Knox's book, Prayer of the Heart, and I felt like my heart had expanded and I had expanded. Now, I read books all the time, and I don't always have it as an experience of prayer, but it can be. if you do it with the intention and are open to having an awareness of the presence of God. So what else do we have on TV? We have soap operas. They're not on the daytime very much anymore, which is good because I used to be addicted to a couple of them. But you know, some of those nighttime dramas are pretty much like soap operas too. But how many of us needed to experience a drama before we would turn to God? Any 12-steppers out there? I think we can all relate to 12-steppers because all of us have had times in our life when our life became unmanageable and we were forced to seek something greater than ourselves. Now, the thing about soap operas is that once you've noticed the drama and you've turned your life over to God, you don't really need to revisit that channel anymore. Unless it's as an observer, because sometimes it's helpful to watch other people's dramas and be grateful that you're not there anymore. No matter how bad your life is, there's always someone who has it a little bit worse. And we all have dramas now and then. But once we've discovered that channel, the other channels for connecting with God, we have better tools for dealing with the dramas of life. And then we have talk shows. Now, talking is an age-old method of connecting with God. We do it every morning, every Sunday. We have an opening prayer where someone talks out words of prayer. But the talk shows, you know, some of those talk shows were kind of glorified soap operas, like I'm thinking Jerry Springer. You know, that wouldn't be an avenue for prayer. But I used to love watching Oprah all the time. And she was great because she brought new thought out to the world. She would have speakers such as Deepak Chopra or Wayne Dyer or Marianne Williamson. Do you know she brought 1,000 copies of Marianne Williamson's book, Return to Love, and gave it to the audience? Yeah. She got them practicing random acts of kindness. She got people using gratitude journals. Now she has her own channel, Oprah Winfrey Network. So what we learned from Oprah's talk show is that giving thanks is a wonderful way to pray and connect with God. Try giving thanks for the sunshine or the flowers or the people in your life. I can promise you, if you spend a day giving thanks, you will feel connected to God. And how about the gratitude journal? You can write down 5 things every night that you're grateful for. And I tell you that will help you be more connected during the day because you're going to be keeping an eye out for things to be grateful for because you know you have to write them down at night. And for those of you who've practiced random acts of kindness, you know that feeling it brings you. So those are channels that connect you with something higher than your small self, and that's the purpose of prayer. There are also channels on television where you can experience yoga or aerobics. Believe it or not, the body can be a wonderful way to pray. Tai Chi or yoga are ways in which we can use the body to still the mind or expand our sense of who we are. They are ways to get us to transcend the physical. We've even seen, like on Easter, we saw how dance can be a prayer. We had a couple of wonderful dancers dancing on Easter. So what other channels do we have? We have nature channels where you can watch all kinds of animal life and plant life and undersea life. And I know many of you have had a prayerful experience out in nature. Watching a sunset or a sunrise or the eclipse. Wasn't that awesome? Yeah. Looking up at the stars at night can allow you to transcend yourself and connect with something larger than your physical human self. You know, many times when I've had difficulty connecting with God, I've gone for a walk in nature, and that has helped me connect. We're used to praying in our local sanctuaries, and we go inside to our inner sanctuaries, but the great outdoors is one of God's great sanctuaries. Have you ever gone outside and simply raised your hands up to the sky? Yeah. You know, I used to frown on that because in Unity we teach that God is within. And yet, I think sometimes our soul just needs to connect with something greater than ourselves. We are connecting with that great satellite in the sky. And I think the reason we're drawn to raise our hands and look up at the sky is because there's no boundary when we look out there. I feel that when I go to the ocean, too. There's just no boundary. So if you're looking up and all you see is vastness and eternal space, our souls respond to that feeling. So nature is a great channel for becoming aware of the presence of God. When I was growing up, my mom always made us watch Wild Kingdom. I would have probably preferred to watch something else, but Wild Kingdom it was. She also made us watch Lawrence Welk. I'm not going to even try to correlate that with prayer. Although I did get to meet one of the Lennon sisters at a Unity church in Branson one time, and that was pretty awesome. Sometimes it's easier to see God in nature. We can look at a rose or a tree, and we say, yeah, that's the work of God. And other objects, it's just, more difficult. But in nature, we can see God's beauty, God's creativity, God's strength. We can see God everywhere if we hold the intention of finding God there. It reminds me of those pictures we used to see as children, those little games as children where you had to find the hidden object. Sometimes they were real easy to find, and other times they were kind of difficult. And they make those for adults too. And there's a famous artist called Bev Doolittle who has wonderful art that makes you really look. Now, do you see the horse? You have to kind of look to see the horse, because at first it just looks like snow and stones. But there's a horse. Now, there are faces in the rocks. If you look, you can see the faces. Isn't that cool? And the third one. This one's one of my favorites. This is called Mother Earth. I almost bought this painting. It was hanging in a museum, and I so wanted to buy it. And I would have, it's risen in value by thousands of dollars. It didn't match all the purple in my house. So I didn't buy it, but I'm kind of wishing I did. But the truth is that God is behind all of those. Just like in those pictures, we could look and find the objects there. God is the hidden object behind every other object. We just have to look. Sometimes it will be easy, and sometimes it will be more difficult. We look at babies, and it's so easy to see the face of God in babies, isn't it? But look around you in this room. There will be some people in this room, it will be easy to look at their face and see God there. And there will be others it'll be more difficult. And especially when you leave this room and go out into the world and see the people out on the street, or your relatives, or your in-laws. But God is there, waiting to be found behind everything and everyone. So with this attitude of watchful awareness, we can truly become aware of God in everything, and not just in things, but even in movement. When we walk, we can know that it is God who walks. That's a wonderful way to meditate, is to just go on a mindful walk. When we see, we can know that it is God who sees, and it is God we are seeing. God is both the act of seeing and what is seen. There's tons of food channels too. Did you know that when you eat, you can know that it is God who eats? I went to a retreat one time that was a silent retreat, and they made eating a meditation. You should try it sometime. Sit down and eat, no television, no talking, no phone. Just you and the food, and notice everything. It's called mindfulness. And it's a wonderful Buddhist practice of prayer. Or music channels. One of my favorite ways of connecting with God is through music. And we have great musicians here. Don't they touch your heart when they sing? Yeah. Music is a wonderful way. That's one of my favorite ways to connect with God. There are also sitcom channels and comedy channels that allow us to laugh at ourselves, which is a very necessary ingredient in life. There are many scriptures in the Bible that talk about the importance of laughter. Proverbs 17:22, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. Laughter is a great way to stay encouraged. I saw a minister in a Unity Church one time who did laughter as a prayer. She stood up there and just started laughing. And laughing and laughing, and little by little, people in the congregation started laughing until all of a sudden everybody in the congregation was laughing. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful feeling. They've done studies that show that laughter and watching comedy can have a healing effect on cancer and illness. And you know, one of my favorite pictures of Jesus is that of the laughing Jesus. Isn't that beautiful? So if your soul is feeling down and you can't find a way to pray that helps you, find a way to laugh. We need to find those channels that work for us, that assist us in connecting to a higher source. And those channels will be different for different people. They may be different for you at different times of your life, depending on whatever's going on. And what works for you today might not work for you tomorrow. I want to challenge you against channel surfing too much. Sometimes you have to stay on one channel long enough to see if it's going to work for you. But there's been times in my life when I could not sit down and meditate. I could not sit down and be still. My body wouldn't cooperate. My mind wouldn't cooperate. And if that was the only way I knew how to connect with God, I would have felt pretty isolated. But I've learned that if I can get intentional about connecting with the presence of God, I can find all kinds of channels. And in fact, all of life can become a channel for the expression and experience of God simply by having the intention of seeing and honoring God in all. You are the television set. You're the receiver. God is constantly broadcasting the frequency. All you have to do is tune in whatever way works for you. And if you're having trouble connecting with God in the channel you've normally used, try changing channels. That's what Unity is all about. We teach people to change the channel of lack and separation and tune instead to a channel of oneness and abundance. You will find a channel that works for you because all of life is broadcasting God, and all you have to do is turn on the receiver. And as for me, I have cable TV and streaming channels because I want as many as possible to connect with God. Unity has a wonderful comedian. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. His name is Swami Byanananda. And he said, the most powerful tool on the planet today is tell a vision. That is where I tell a vision to you and you tell a vision to me. That way, if we don't like the programming we're getting, we can simply change the channel. If one method of connecting with God isn't working for you, simply change the channel and try something different. God is always streaming and just waiting for you to find a way to connect. God bless you.
Interested in finding out more about Unity, the history of Unity and New Thought movement, the history of UCOH. If so, you'll want to join our PATH class May 5th, 19th, and June 2nd from 9:30 to 11. UCOH PATH class is a requirement for membership in this spiritual community, but all are invited. Childcare will be provided with advanced registration. See the UCOH calendar for details. Award-winning and channel Paul Selig returns to UCOH on Saturday, May 11th and 12th for a World Made New Weekend Workshop. Check the UCOH calendar for registration information. On Sunday, May 12th, is Mother's Day, and we are once again honoring mothers here at UCOH with the second annual Mother's Day Munch and Brunch. It is a mini tea party, and we want to invite all to come and enjoy some delicious snacks, tea, and punch before the 11:30 a.m. service. It'll be from 10:15 to 11:15 and be a wonderful time to connect. We have a special Mother's Day service planned. Armand and Angelina will be here. They will speak at the 11:30 service. Then on Monday, May 13th, they will present a concert at 7 p.m. in the sanctuary. Register online or get your tickets at the door. Don't miss this unique and delightful couple. Next Sunday, at the 11:30 and 8:30 services, Reverend Jean Lean will present her talk, Am I Enough? And explore the question, how did we get to this insidious belief that somehow we don't measure up? And how can we let it go? 8:30 service is in Legacy Suites or on Facebook. 11:30 service is in the sanctuary or online. Please join us. Also, next Sunday, May 5th, UCOH Bookstore is having a 30% off sale on regularly priced items. This sale is sponsored by Kevin and Jennifer Wood. Thank you, Kevin and Jennifer, for your generous support. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I circulate, and I am grateful.